Ever have someone in your family who acts like they've got the final say on your life, as if they're entitled to make all your decisions? Maybe it's a meddling cousin, a strict aunt, or even a sibling who thinks the world should spin their way. For me, that's my younger sister, Sophie, 28, who's absolutely convinced that her wants should dictate everything. This time, she didn't just want something. She decided to throw her birthday party at my house without even asking me. But I wasn't about to let her steamroll me, so I taught her a lesson she'll never forget. Follow my story. It might just give you some ideas for dealing with your own family drama. I'm Olivia, 30 years old, a finance director at a logistics company. My husband, Nathan, a software engineer, and I have been married for 5 wonderful years. 2 years ago, after years of hard work, we treated ourselves to a gorgeous apartment, a well-earned reward for our relentless efforts. It's a spacious, airy place with modern furnishings and a charming little garden where Nathan and I savor peaceful mornings over coffee. Since we bought the place, our apartment has become the family's go-to spot for every major celebration. Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's, you name it. I don't mind too much, since I can usually keep things under control. But trouble started brewing when Sophie, who works in the fashion industry, began treating our home like her personal event space. Sophie's always been the type to get her way, and once she sets her mind on something, changing it is like moving a mountain. The breaking point came last month when she announced she was hosting her birthday party at my apartment, without so much as a courtesy ask. I remember that morning vividly. It was a beautiful Saturday, so quiet I could hear the soft drip of my beloved coffee maker. I'd just picked up my mug, inhaling the rich, warm aroma, ready to ease into a peaceful weekend when, bam, the door burst open, shattering my calm. Sophie stormed into the kitchen like a whirlwind, her face lit up with excitement, as if she'd just had the idea of the century. Before I could even react, she threw her hands up and declared, "I'm throwing my birthday party here. I've already told everyone. It's happening this weekend." I nearly dropped my coffee. Wait, what? Sophie flipped her hair, her tone brimming with confidence, as if I'd asked the most obvious question ever. Your place is huge, the garden's gorgeous, and the kitchen's top-notch. It just makes sense. Everyone's used to partying here anyway, so why change things? Nathan, lounging on the couch flipping through a magazine, glanced up at me with his classic, "Oh no, not again" look, before diving back into his reading, clearly opting out of the drama. I crossed my arms, holding my ground, keeping my voice calm. "Sophie, you didn't even ask us." She shrugged, completely unfazed. "What's there to ask? You've got no reason to say no. Your place is the biggest. It's the perfect choice. Besides, I've already invited everyone, and they're all expecting it. If you cancel, you'll embarrass me." I raised an eyebrow, biting back a sarcastic laugh. "So, I'd be embarrassing you by not going along with a party you planned without my permission." Sophie pouted, her tone turning sulky but insistent. "Come on, Olivia. I know you'll say yes. You don't have to do anything. I'll take care of everything. Just open the door and let people in. Easy." I turned to Nathan, silently begging for backup, but he just shrugged, his expression saying, "Good luck, babe. I'm not touching this." I took a deep breath and faced Sophie again, determined not to let her bulldoze me this time. "Listen, you can't just decide this on your own. Nathan and I have plans. We're not agreeing to this." Sophie waved her hands in frustration, like I was being ridiculous. "No, no, no, you don't get it. You can't say no. I've already planned the menu, ordered the cake, and booked a DJ. If you cancel, you'll ruin everything." I folded my arms tighter, my gaze narrowing. How can I cancel something I never agreed to in the first place? Sophie rolled her eyes, exasperated. "You're overreacting. Do you even realize how important this party is? I got a cake from the best bakery, invited my close friend group, and even picked a dress code. You can't be this selfish. I let out a dry chuckle. Selfish? You made all these decisions without asking, and now I'm the selfish one? Sophie sighed dramatically, as if I were the unreasonable one. Ugh, you're being so difficult. Whatever, I have a ton to organize. Saturday at 7 in the evening. Don't make this complicated. With that, she spun on her heel, pulled out her phone, and started texting furiously, probably finalizing her guest list. I stood there, watching her go, feeling my blood pressure spike. Nathan took a slow sip of his coffee, amused. "So, how are you planning to handle this?" he asked, his tone teasing. I clenched my fists, a cold smile forming. Just wait and see. The next day, I was ready to enjoy a relaxing Sunday, stretching in bed, when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. A message from Mom. I reached for it, still half asleep, and read, "So excited about Sophie's birthday party at your place. How's the preparation going?" I snapped awake, blinking to make sure I wasn't imagining things. What the heck? Anger flared in my chest as the reality sank in. I muttered Sophie's name through clenched teeth, gripping my phone tightly. Nathan, still wrapped in the blankets, mumbled groggily, "What's wrong?" I nudged his shoulder to wake him properly. "Did you know Sophie told the whole family we're hosting her birthday party?" Nathan frowned slightly, then lazily reached for my phone. He read the message, sighed, and rubbed his temples like a headache was brewing. "Oh, for God's sake," he muttered. I scrolled through my messages, and sure enough, Sophie hadn't just informed Mom. She'd sent a message to the entire family group chat. "This weekend is going to be amazing. Olivia and Nathan's place is perfect, spacious and gorgeous, with a top-notch kitchen. Everyone, just come and have fun." As if I'd willingly offered to host her party. I held up my phone to Nathan like it was damning evidence in a court case. "See? She invited everyone, completely ignoring that we said no." Nathan set the phone aside, yawning. "I take it you're not letting this slide?" I crossed my arms, taking a deep breath. "Not a chance." Nathan shifted to face me, curiosity flickering in his eyes. "So, what's the plan?" Slowly, I smiled, and there was nothing kind about it. "Just wait and see. If anyone thinks I'm against this just because I'm selfish or don't like parties, they couldn't be more wrong. I have a good reason for never allowing Sophie's birthday party at my house again. It all started with last year's disaster. Back then, I naively believed hosting a small, simple gathering would be no big deal. Sophie begged me for an entire month, promising everything would be under control. Just a few close friends. I trusted her, and that was my biggest mistake. That evening, I prepared snacks, bought a beautiful cake from Sophie's favorite bakery, and even decorated a bit to set a cozy mood. It was supposed to be an enjoyable night. But when 7 in the evening struck, my nightmare officially began. The doorbell rang non-stop. I opened it, expecting about 10 guests, as Sophie had said. But no, nearly 30 people flooded into my home like a tidal wave, laughing and chatting as if they'd walked into a nightclub. Someone blasted EDM music, another helped themselves to beer from my fridge. A few sprawled across my sofa like it was their lounge. Sophie just giggled and waved me off. "Relax, it's my birthday, have some fun." Sophie's version of fun turned out to be utter chaos. By 9 in the evening, things had spiraled completely out of control. A group of her friends decided to play beer pong on my dining table, spilling beer all over my carpet. Another guest slipped and shattered a stack of brand new plates I'd just bought. Someone even brought a hookah pipe and started smoking indoors, turning my living room into a makeshift hookah lounge. Then came the moment I knew things had gone too far. The doorbell rang again, but this time it wasn't another guest. It was Mr. Thompson, my next-door neighbor, a man in his 60s who always wore cardigan sweaters and had a strict habit of going to bed early. He stood at my doorstep, arms crossed, his expression a mix of irritation and disappointment. "Olivia, can I have a word?" His voice was calm but firm. Feeling my face heat up with embarrassment, I nodded and stepped into the hallway. "I don't mean to ruin your party," he continued, "but the music is deafening. The whole building can hear it. Some of the other neighbors have complained. It's already past 9. Maybe it's time to turn it down a bit." I felt a deep wave of humiliation wash over me. Nathan and I had worked so hard to afford this apartment, and now, thanks to Sophie's party, it had become the source of noise complaints from the entire complex. I apologized profusely to Mr. Thompson, assuring him I'd handle it immediately. But when I turned back inside, the first thing I saw was some random guy, not one of Sophie's friends, sitting on my kitchen counter, barefoot, with his feet propped up on my table like he owned the place. That was it. I marched straight into the living room and cut the music off. Every head turned to look at me, some groaning in frustration, but I didn't care. Crossing my arms, I took a deep breath and spoke loud and clear, my voice leaving no room for argument. "Party's over. Everyone, leave now." Sophie's jaw dropped, her face a mix of shock and betrayal, as if I'd just shut down a Michelin star restaurant. "What are you doing? We haven't even cut the cake yet," she protested. I narrowed my eyes. "Then take the cake to your place and cut it there." Under my glare, the party finally ended. One by one, the guests shuffled out, but as I looked around my apartment, beer-soaked carpets, the stench of smoke clinging to the air, shattered dishes everywhere, I knew one thing for sure. Sophie would never host another birthday party in my home again. And yet, here we were, with Sophie once again taking it upon herself to throw her party at my place without my permission. I stayed silent for 4 days. No arguments, no objections, no texts to stop her. I watched as she excitedly planned, convinced she'd won. The family group chat lit up constantly with her enthusiastic messages. "I ordered the birthday cake. It looks amazing. Got it from a famous bakery. It'll be delicious. We're having a DJ. How fun is that? I want to make the night unforgettable. Everyone, remember the dress code, white and gold to match my party theme. If you don't dress accordingly, there'll be a penalty." I scrolled through her messages, reading each one carefully, and then I simply smiled. Because Sophie could plan all she wanted. She could order the cake, book the DJ, and even hire the most extravagant decorators if she wished. But there was one tiny detail she didn't know. I had booked 2 plane tickets to the Maldives. We were leaving Saturday morning, one day before Sophie's birthday. This time, there would be no chaotic party in my home, no neighbors knocking on my door to complain, and most importantly, no birthday celebration at my house. Setting my phone down, I glanced at Nathan, who was casually scrolling through his laptop, double-checking our travel itinerary. He looked up at me with a raised eyebrow and a smirk. "So, we're just going to let her figure it out alone?" I nodded, shrugging. "Exactly. Let's see how Sophie manages when she shows up, and the hosts are nowhere to be found." Nathan chuckled, stretching his arms before leaning back into his chair. "I must say, I like how you're handling this." I took a sip of my coffee, eyes gleaming with amusement. Sophie wanted a party? She could have one, but I wouldn't be here to witness the chaos. Good luck, little sister. Nathan and I carefully packed our suitcases the day before Sophie's birthday party. I felt overwhelming relief as I folded each piece of clothing into my luggage. This time, there would be no cleaning up after Sophie's chaos, no neighbors complaining about blaring music. Before leaving, I made a quick stop next door and rang the bell to Mr. Thompson's apartment. the kind neighbor who had knocked on my door last year to complain about the noise. He opened the door, wearing his usual calm expression. "Something wrong, Olivia?" I smiled and handed him a bottle of wine as a small gesture of appreciation. "Mr. Thompson, I'll be away for a few days. If anyone causes trouble, especially my sister, please feel free to call the police." Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow, taking the bottle with an amused look in his eyes. "So, you've got it all planned out, huh?" I chuckled. Of course. I don't make the same mistake twice. And with that, Nathan and I wheeled our suitcases out to the car, locked up the apartment securely, activated the security system, and headed off to the airport. On the night of Sophie's birthday, I was stretched out on a sun lounger, enjoying the cool ocean breeze on a pristine beach in the Maldives. In front of me was a chilled cocktail, and Nathan was flipping through a travel book beside me, both of us fully immersed in absolute relaxation. Until my phone started vibrating again and again. A flood of missed calls and messages poured in. I sipped my cocktail, slid my sunglasses down, and lazily unlocked my phone. "Where are you? I'm here, but the door is locked." "Open the door. Everyone's waiting outside." "Are you kidding me? Don't play games with me." Message after message from Sophie. I sighed deeply, a slow smile creeping onto my lips. With one hand, I opened my security camera app and checked the live feed. The sight on my screen made me chuckle. Right in front of my apartment, a group of about 15 people, including Sophie and her friends, stood in disbelief, staring at the locked door. Sophie was furiously tapping her phone, probably trying to call me or Nathan. Some of her friends were glancing at their watches, exchanging impatient looks. I zoomed in. Sophie was stomping her foot, muttering under her breath in frustration. But the fun wasn't over yet. After about 10 minutes, Sophie seemed to have lost all patience. I watched as she stepped up to the door and jiggled the handle again. Of course, it didn't budge. Then she turned and spoke to some guy in the group. He nodded knowingly, pulled out a small toolkit, and crouched in front of my lock, trying to pick it open. I narrowed my eyes. "Sophie, are you seriously breaking into my house now?" I was just about to call Mr. Thompson when I saw his apartment door swing open. Stepping out into the hallway, arms crossed, Mr. Thompson stood there, watching the group in complete silence. His face was unreadable, but I could only imagine the unimpressed thoughts running through his mind. I didn't have to do a thing. 10 minutes later, the police arrived. A patrol car pulled up in front of the apartment building, and 2 officers stepped out. I could see them clearly on my camera, walking up to Sophie's group with firm expressions. Sophie shot up immediately, stammering something, while some of her friends tried to distance themselves, pretending they had nothing to do with this. The guy with the lockpicking tools quickly shoved them back into his bag. I couldn't hear their conversation through the camera, but I watched Sophie frantically gesturing, her face pale. One officer shook his head and pointed toward the apartment entrance, most likely ordering them to leave immediately. The scene was beyond satisfying. I took another sip of my cocktail and glanced at Nathan. "The cops are here." He raised an eyebrow. "Already?" I turned my phone toward him, showing the live footage of Sophie's disaster unfolding. Nathan chuckled, shaking his head. "I never thought I'd see the day my wife set a trap for her sister." I laughed. "It's not a trap. It's just natural consequences." Nathan lifted his cocktail, clinking his glass against mine. "Well then, congratulations. You handled this perfectly." I smirked. "This is just the beginning. Sophie won't forget this anytime soon." With that, I set my phone down and returned to the view. No chaotic party, no Sophie, just me, Nathan, and the breathtaking beauty of the Maldives. The following day, I woke up in our luxurious bungalow, surrounded by complete tranquility. The only sound was the gentle lapping of waves against the shore below. Nathan was still fast asleep beside me, one arm draped over his forehead, breathing steadily. I stretched lazily, reaching for my phone on the bedside table and unlocking it. Immediately, the screen flooded with unread messages. "Where are you? You can't do this to me. Do you know how long we had to stand outside? All my friends saw this. You embarrassed me. Mom is furious. You better explain yourself." All from Sophie. I scrolled down. She wasn't done. "We had to take the cake to a random cafe and eat it there. This was the worst birthday ever. You're a terrible, selfish, petty sister who doesn't care about me at all." I set the phone down, took a sip of water, and gazed out the window. The ocean stretched endlessly before me, a perfect shade of turquoise, with golden sunlight glistening off the waves. It was so breathtakingly beautiful that I found it impossible to care about Sophie's tantrum. And then my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. Mom. Sighing, mentally preparing myself, I answered. "Hi, Mom." Her voice came through immediately, no greeting, just straight to the storm. "Olivia, what the hell did you do?" I winced and pulled the phone slightly away from my ear. "What are you talking about?" "What am I talking about? Sophie cried all night. She said you ruined her birthday on purpose. I don't understand what you were thinking." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. "Mom, I told Sophie I did not agree to host her party. She decided independently, sent out invites, and planned everything without asking me. And now she's mad at me?" Mom cut me off, still exasperated. "But at the very least, you should have warned her. How could you lock the door and leave it like that? Do you know they stood outside for hours?" I smirked. "Oh, and did Sophie tell you about last year's party? Did she tell you how I had to clean up a disaster after it? How the neighbors complained and the police almost got called because of the noise? Did she mention how much money I had to spend fixing things after her friends broke dishes, spilled beer on my carpet, and smoked hookah inside my house?" Silence. For a brief moment, Mom had no response. Then she sighed. "But that was just one time. Her birthday only happens once a year. Did you have to go that far?" I let out a cold chuckle. One time was more than enough, and let me be clear, there will never be a second time. Another silence. Mom finally spoke, her tone softer, but still hesitant. "Olivia, she's your sister. You can't just treat her like this." I sat up straight and made my point crystal clear. "Mom, she's not a child anymore. She's 28 years old. She needs to learn that actions have consequences. No one is obligated to cater to her every whim." Another pause. Mom knew I was right, but didn't want to admit it. Finally, she let out a long, weary sigh. "Fine. I don't want to argue anymore. I hope this doesn't create distance between you two." I looked at the stunning view of Maldives paradise before me and replied calmly, "Mom, as long as Sophie respects my boundaries, we'll be fine." The call ended. I placed my phone back on the table and stretched, feeling pure satisfaction. Nathan stirred beside me, blinking sleepily. "Was that your mom?" "Yep," I smirked. "She yelled at you too?" He yawned and pulled me closer. "I'm used to it." I laughed, snuggling into his warmth. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about Sophie anymore. I was here, in paradise, finally enjoying the vacation I deserved. After the call with Mom, I sank into the lounge chair on our balcony, taking a deep breath and trying to soak in the fresh ocean air. But then my phone buzzed again. Family group chat. Family forever. I opened it, already predicting what was waiting for me. A flood of accusatory messages. Aunt Clara. "Olivia, how could you do this to your sister? She just wanted to have a fun birthday." Aunt Ellen. As the older sister, you should be more understanding. Sophie didn't do anything to deserve being locked out. Uncle George, what you did was harsh. She's your sister, not a stranger. Cousin Max, people came expecting a party and ended up standing outside, embarrassed. You should have told her if you didn't want to host. I read each message, feeling equal parts annoyed and amused. I had been clear from the beginning. I said no. Sophie ignored me, made plans independently, and sent out invites. Somehow, this was my fault? I sighed and decided to set the record straight once and for all. Me. Everyone, let me make this clear. I told Sophie from the start that I did not agree to host her party. She ignored me, invited everyone, and even hired a DJ. If you're upset that no one was warned, let me ask, who should have asked permission before sending invitations? Who is being selfish here? I wasn't done. Me. Last year, I let her have her party. Do you know what happened? My house turned into a nightclub. Neighbors complained, dishes were broken, beer was spilled all over my carpet, and it took me a week to clean up. I refused to go through that again. Yet Sophie decided for me, and now I'm the bad guy. I hit send and waited. Some people read the messages but stayed silent. A few, like Aunt Clara and Aunt Ellen, finally started to understand. Clara: "Oh, I didn't know last year was that bad." Ellen: "If that's true, then Sophie was wrong, but you should have explained this to us sooner." But of course, not everyone was willing to see reason. George: "Regardless, you should be the bigger person. Family means compromise." Max: "I don't care what happened last year. Publicly humiliating your sister in front of her friends? That's cold, Olivia." Some distant aunt: "It was just a party. Did you have to react that harshly?" I shook my head, exhausted. They didn't care about boundaries. They didn't care that I said no. They only cared about whether I was nice enough to cater to Sophie, like she was a spoiled 5-year-old who needed coddling. I had nothing left to say. Calmly, I pressed and held the chat name, scrolled to the bottom, and hit Leave Group. Poof, Olivia has left the group. I set my phone on the table, leaned back into my chair, and closed my eyes. The waves still crashed gently outside. The sky was still bright blue. The breeze was still soft and warm. No more messages, no more judgment, no more nonsense drama. Nathan stepped onto the balcony, holding 2 glasses of fresh juice. "All done?" he asked, handing me a glass. I smiled, taking it. "All done." He raised an eyebrow. "How?" I shrugged. "I left the group chat." Nathan burst out laughing, then raised his glass. "Brilliant. Cheers to finally escaping the family circus." After a fantastic vacation in the Maldives, Nathan and I returned home feeling more relaxed than ever. The trip had not only helped me escape Sophie's drama, but also reminded me that I have the right to enjoy my life on my terms, without being burdened by responsibilities I never agreed to. But barely 5 minutes after stepping into our home, the doorbell rang furiously. I opened it, and no surprise, Sophie stormed in, eyes blazing with fury. "You were beyond out of line, Olivia," she nearly screamed, slamming the door shut behind her. Nathan sighed silently, retreating into his office, avoiding the incoming storm. I crossed my arms, leaning casually against the kitchen counter, watching her melt down with pure composure. "Are you here to yell at me?" I asked. "Do you even have to ask?" Sophie was practically shaking. "Do you have any idea how humiliated I was? My friends saw everything. Do you know what they think now? I'm a total idiot who planned a party without even checking if the hosts agreed. How do you explain that?" I shrugged, casually lifting my teacup and taking a slow sip. "I don't need to explain anything." Sophie froze, clearly not expecting that response. "What? What do you mean?" I placed my cup down and met her gaze. I told you no from the very beginning. You chose not to listen. You chose to invite guests, book a DJ, and plan everything without permission. And now you want to blame me. Tell me, Sophie, who embarrassed themselves here? She opened her mouth, ready to argue, but then stopped. I saw it. There was a flicker of realization in her eyes. For a split second, she had no valid excuse. Finally, she scowled, muttering, "You're so rigid. You never know how to go with the flow." I smiled. "And that's exactly why I no longer have to clean up after your birthday parties." Sophie clenched her jaw, then spun on her heel and stormed out without another word. After that incident, Sophie was visibly upset. She stopped texting, stopped calling, and completely avoided family gatherings. If this had been the old me, I would have felt guilty, would have tried to make peace to smooth things over. But this time, I felt at peace. No more worrying about Sophie making decisions for me. No more pointless arguments over who was right or wrong. No more sleepless nights wondering if I should give in again. Just silence, and I genuinely enjoyed that silence. But in rare, still moments, I wondered, was I too harsh? I could have explained things better, perhaps. I could have found a softer way to teach Sophie this lesson. But then I remembered, I had tried before. I had explained, I had been patient, I had been kind, and Sophie never changed. So maybe this was the best way. If you were in my shoes, what would you do? Would you give in to keep the peace in the family? Or would you do what I did, set clear boundaries, even if it meant upsetting others? Dear viewers, thank you for being here. Stay tuned to the channel for tons of exciting videos. Every day, we upload fresh stories packed with thrills and surprises. Don't miss out. Comment, share, subscribe, and hit that like button.